This all took place a while ago, and a close friend suggested that I share my divorce story here. Please excuse any unusual writing. This is my first time posting here. I'm a 37-year-old male, and my wife is 31. It began a few years ago, and I thought we were a happy, typical suburban couple. Despite being together for a long time, I never saw this coming. Our marriage was quite trouble-free, even before we got married. We had an open relationship without any problems. We were financially stable, had a satisfying bed life, and had a strong love and respect for each other. We're the parents of 2 kids, a 16-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy. I believed our social life was healthy, but we hit a rough patch that many married couples go through. Both of us were working long hours and not spending enough time together, which started affecting our marriage. Additionally, I noticed that she was frequently on her phone, texting with her girlfriends. Initially, I didn't pay much attention to it, but her behavior started to change. She became overly protective of her phone and distant toward our kids and me. These were clear warning signs that concerned me, so I made a greater effort to leave work on time, help with household tasks, spend quality time with her, and be more emotionally present. Despite my efforts, the gap between us seemed to grow wider over a few weeks. She appeared even more detached, and I discovered her affair on our son's 8th birthday. We had a full house with family, friends, and colleagues in attendance. Her parents were there too, and we were all enjoying ourselves. When it was time for my son to blow out the candles, she handed me her phone to take a picture of her, my son, her friends, and her parents. Just as I was about to snap the photo, a text message notification appeared. The message said, "I love you very much, baby. I miss you." I don't know how long I stood there in shock, but it must have been more than a minute. "I miss you." My ex-wife's voice brought me back to reality, and I managed to force a smile as I took the photo. I have to give myself credit for how composed I appeared that night, maintaining my composure and putting on a smile. However, my thoughts were racing. The number wasn't saved in her phone, leaving me clueless about the person she was having an affair with. I wondered how long the affair had been going on and whether they were intimate. It was evident that they were. Later that night, after we finished cleaning up, I put the kids to bed and headed to our bedroom. She was fast asleep, exhausted from the party. Quietly, I retrieved her phone from under her pillow and went to the bathroom. I checked her emails, texts, and every possible message. I attempted to access her messenger, but I didn't know the password, and she had deleted the texts. She had been cautious, explaining why I hadn't noticed it earlier. Frustrated and angry, I returned to bed, staring at the woman I had faithfully been with for years, vowing to uncover the truth. A few days later, I arrived home early to spend time with the kids. She was out grocery shopping. I decided to charge the kids' phone, which was her old tablet phone we left for emergencies. My 8-year-old son used it to watch Sid the Science Kid. While charging it, I accidentally discovered that her messenger, Facebook, was still logged in. I entered and found a plethora of explicit messages between my wife and a man named Lewis. There were numerous inappropriate texts and even unclothed photos of both my wife and him. It was overwhelming to read. Lewis worked at a bank, and it was clear they were deeply infatuated with each other. She confessed that she no longer loved me, criticized our intimacy, and claimed that no one could satisfy her like Lewis did. She even discussed plans to leave me and marry him, using my flaws, insecurities, and secrets as ammunition to mock me. Reading it was incredibly painful. Based on the length of the text messages, the affair appeared to have been ongoing for a period of 2 years. I was nearly in tears and decided to capture some screenshots, contemplating how to confront my wife upon her return. Suddenly, a text message arrived from the person I'll refer to as Craphead, asking if their plans for the weekend were still on. The following day, my ex responded affirmatively with a "Yay, honey." Craphead then went on to provide her with the hotel's name and his room number, which was quite foolish and fortunate for me. I decided to confront them there and expose them both. I knew their location and room number, so all I had to do was set up the perfect surprise. My primary concern was for my children and the impending changes in our lives. When my wife returned from the supermarket, I couldn't bring myself to look her in the eye, so I left the house. I consulted with a lawyer, explored my legal options, had a few drinks, and started devising my plan. Surprisingly, the next day, my wife began to act exceptionally kind towards me. She proposed a spa weekend with her friends to relax and, upon her return, suggested we go on vacation to rekindle our relationship and focus on our marriage. I wholeheartedly agreed, assuring her it was a fantastic idea and that I was willing to do anything to strengthen our bond. I contacted my attorney and asked them to draft a comprehensive separation agreement that included a move-out deadline for my wife, weekend visitation rights, and the suspension of child support until the divorce was finalized. She had no idea of my intentions. Once she prepared to leave for her spa weekend and expressed her love for me, I wished her to have a good time. As soon as she was gone, I went to the bank, closed our joint and money market accounts, and obtained a cashier's check for her portion, depositing my half into my new account. I return to the house and head to my office, where I print around 35 pages of Facebook screenshots. I delay my departure intentionally, wanting my wife and craphead to become more comfortable before my arrival. I also make a call to her parents, inviting them to join me for a surprise. They express initial concern and inquire about the nature of the surprise, but I manage to reassure and persuade them to come along. Additionally, I managed to contact Lewis's wife through his Facebook account, which wasn't too challenging. Initially, I attempted to call her, but there was no answer. Consequently, I decided to drive to her address and explain the situation to her. At first, she breaks down, but eventually she agrees to come. We arrive at the hotel around 12:30, and her parents are already there. We proceed directly to the hotel room. Her parents remain puzzled, questioning if everything is okay and wondering about my wife's whereabouts. They are completely unaware of what's happening or who Lewis's wife is, and I take the time to calm them down. Upon reaching their room, I knock and introduce myself as the hotel manager, requesting to speak with Lewis. Craphead opens the door, wrapped in just a towel, and I can vividly recall the look of shock on his face. He turns pale, attempts to speak, but is interrupted when his wife strikes him hard across the face and departs, with him following. Inside, I hear my wife calling, asking, "Who is it, babe?" I enter the room with her parents, finding my wife wearing only a towel. She turns pale upon seeing us, bursts into tears, and her mother joins in. As the supposed golden child of her parents, she begins to offer excuses and denials, claiming it's not what it appears to be, etc. I inform her that I'm not there to argue, hand her the divorce papers, and provide her with the printed out texts. I also mention that I intend to email them to everyone we know and give a copy to our daughter so that she can see the true nature of her mother. She had a breakdown, and I could tell she was worried about her professional reputation and how her kids would perceive her. I handed her a check for half of the money in our joint account and informed her that I had withdrawn my share from all our other shared accounts. This gave her the means to find a new place. She started crying even more, and her parents remained silent, shedding tears as they stood in the lobby. I could sense the whirlwind of emotions and thoughts racing through her mind. She asked me why I was doing this to her, but we both knew she had brought this upon herself. I told her to sign the divorce papers and leave them at the house when she came to collect her belongings. As I left, I told her she could continue enjoying her time with Lewis. I left and apologized to her parents, expressing my regret that they had to witness the situation. They were understanding and suggested that we both see a marriage counselor before making any decisions, but my mind was already made up. As I walked out, I passed by Lewis and his wife, who were having a heated argument downstairs. I couldn't help but smile a little, thinking he deserved it. We exchanged some heated words, and he asked if I was happy, to which I shouted, "Yes." I got into my car, shed a few tears, but managed to compose myself enough to drive away. I didn't know what she did that evening or over the weekend, but she bombarded me with texts and calls, wanting to talk. I turned off my phone. On Monday, she came to talk to the kids, explaining that mommy and daddy needed some time apart but still loved them. She continued to apologize and expressed her desire to reunite the family, admitting that she didn't know what she was doing. I had no intention of ever taking her back. She had betrayed me. Mrs. Lewis also called later to thank me for my actions, and we became good friends. She eventually filed for divorce herself. We went to court, and I believe the judge felt sympathy for me. He asked for statements from the kids regarding whom they wanted to stay with, and they both chose to stay with me in the house they had grown up in. My ex-wife shed tears. When the divorce was finalized, I acquired the house and had to buy out some of her ownership share, which wasn't much of a hassle. I also gained primary custody of the kids. The children are content and doing well. She continues to call, suggesting that we reconcile, but that's never going to happen. Update. Hey, I wanted to provide an update since many people have been messaging me personally asking for one. It's been several months since the divorce, and I'm doing well, settled in comfortably with the kids. The atmosphere in the house has been somewhat strange. The living room, where we used to spend most of our time as a family, has turned into an almost deserted area that none of us frequents, including the kids. I've also intentionally been working late often to avoid dwelling on it too much. I've been completely ignoring her, but after learning about the 180, I've started to implement it and be civil, though somewhat distant, in my interactions with her. I'm glad I took this approach because I was beginning to feel like a heartless person by completely ignoring her. It wasn't the right way to behave, and I ended up feeling like the one who had wronged her instead of the other way around. The only time I deviated from the 180 inches was when I walked into the bathroom last weekend. She had come over to see the kids, and I found her sitting on the floor near the bathtub, crying. I helped her up and gave her a hug, though it was more of a comforting gesture rather than one filled with affection. The sad part is that I'm so distrustful of her now that I wouldn't be surprised if she was waiting for me to arrive just to put on a show. However, I've completely moved on from my ex. She occasionally visits to see the kids and boasts about how she's willing to do anything and everything to salvage our marriage, eager to prove that her actions were just a foolish mistake. She appears to be in a terrible state. She lost her job and looks physically worn down. I'm convinced she would say anything to escape her current life. Her boss discovered our divorce, and after hearing the story was displeased, leading to her termination. I heard that she and Lewis decided to stay together for a while. I suppose she might have been trying to make me jealous or something, but it doesn't matter at this point. I meant every word I said in my original post. Every bit of love I had for her evaporated into thin air when I read the hurtful things she said. I no longer view her as my true love, the person I could confide in and trust with my life. Instead, I see her as someone disposable, someone who needs to be removed before causing further harm. She attempted to convince me to reach a compromise, suggesting that in 3 or 4 months we could reevaluate our situation and consider couples counseling before giving up entirely. I'm not going along with that plan. The idea of spending Christmas in the same house as my wife makes me feel physically unwell. She'll want to make it all seem perfect, but I'm not interested. Her friends are now on my side. They've been informing me about everything happening with her. Lewis had a really rough time during his divorce. He faced significant losses, including his child and their home. He even started showing up at my house some days after his divorce. He looked like a complete wreck, a man who had lost everything. He confronted me, blaming me for ruining his life. I couldn't help but laugh. He was clearly in a very unhappy state. He got fired from his job after the confrontation. His wife went to his boss and disclosed everything, which displeased the boss. She also shared printed copies of all their messages with his colleagues, leading to his termination. I contacted the police and obtained a restraining order against him. My wife and Lewis are now living together. I've heard that he doesn't treat her well and often blames her for everything. She appears pale and has no friends. Sometimes I feel sympathy for her, and I allow her to stay overnight on occasion, but I'm cautious in my interactions with her. I've been dating other people, and currently, I'm in a relationship with a very kind woman I met at a party thrown by my friends to lift my spirits after the divorce. I was diagnosed with depression, and she's been a breath of fresh air for me. I won't mention her name, but we've been together for 2 months, and she's great with the kids. I've asked her to move in with me. My ex-wife is unhappy about it and still harbors dreams of us being a family again. She continues to beg me to take her back, but as I've stated, that's not happening. She believes she can win me back no matter what it takes. A few weeks later, I received a call from the attorney's office. They informed me that my wife was attempting to reopen the case, citing new information. She claimed to be pregnant with my child. I was confused because it seemed impossible. I considered her a deceitful person, and we hadn't been intimate even before the divorce. I shared this with my friends, and they reassured me that it was just a desperate attempt to reconcile. I couldn't fathom how getting pregnant would help in this situation. It was clear that it was for Lewis, with whom she was residing. The lawyer told me not to worry and mentioned that she would need to undergo a paternity test to establish my fatherhood. I genuinely worry about her mental health, and I think she should consider seeing a psychologist. The next day, she comes over and informs my girlfriend that she's pregnant with my child, emphasizing that she's the mother of my kids. I promptly ask her to leave and make it clear that if she wants to see her children, they should visit her at her place, and she should never return here. She reacts with screams and shouts. She refuses to undergo a paternity test but insists to anyone who will listen that the child is mine, all while accusing me of orchestrating this situation to replace her with a new wife. Some weeks later, Lewis's wife contacts me and reveals that she's reconciling with him. She confesses that she still loves him and believes he's endured enough. She mentions that he'll be moving back in with her soon. I share the news about my ex and her baby, and she expresses her intention to work things out. Without hesitation, Lewis leaves my ex and returns home, leaving her alone and pregnant. I empathize with her suffering, but it's clear that she brought this upon herself. I'm contemplating marrying my new girlfriend, relocating from this house, and embarking on a fresh start in life.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
I'm a 35-year-old man, and I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Caroline, who is 32 years old. She was a year below me in school and had a crush on me from the beginning. Over time, I started to develop feelings for her too. We continued to date throughout our college years, and everyone around us saw our relationship as something extraordinary. Our friends often said that long-distance relationships never work, but we proved them wrong. It wasn't easy, but our strong desire to make it work fueled our commitment. We were deeply in love and willing to do whatever it took. Once I established my career and Caroline neared the end of her college education, I proposed to her. We both knew we couldn't imagine life without each other, so there was no point in waiting any longer. We eagerly anticipated spending the rest of our lives together. However, things changed over time. Initially, our marriage was like any typical newlywed couple during the honeymoon phase, unable to keep our hands off each other. We made each other the center of our world. As the years went by, the honeymoon phase naturally faded, but we remained happy. Our days together were filled with love, and we made an effort to surprise each other with little gestures that kept the romance alive. It wasn't forced, it was effortless and genuine. To provide some background, I completed my business education, and I was ready to take over my father's business since I was his only son. He never pressured me into it, but I had always been passionate about business. I eagerly visited my dad's office as a child, fascinated by how he interacted with people and worked tirelessly. I observed him closely and knew from a young age that this was my calling in life. After I graduated from college, I was eager to dive headfirst into the business world. I had a strong determination and had to put in a lot of hard work. My dad was always there to guide me, pointing out my mistakes and offering assistance. I did make some early mistakes, but those are often crucial for achieving success. Over time, I became proficient in running the business and started receiving recognition and praise. Following our marriage, Caroline decided to stop working. She had been employed at a company but quit her job a few months into our marriage. I didn't want her to do that, as I'm the type of person who fully supports career ambitions. I wanted my wife to pursue her passions and excel in her chosen path, and I was always there to encourage her. However, Caroline had different plans. She explained that she simply wanted to take a break from work and enjoy being a homemaker, focusing on cooking and doing the things she loved. I pointed out that such extended breaks could set one's career back and make it challenging to return to work later. But Caroline insisted it was what she truly desired, and I respected her decision. I was earning a good income, so it wasn't as though she needed to contribute financially to our household. Anything she earned was rightfully hers, and that's how it should be. I've always believed that a man should provide for his family, and I was content with that role. However, when she decided to quit her job, she wasn't honest with me. She told me she was just taking a temporary break. But I overheard her talking to her mom on the phone one day when I had woken up early. She revealed to her mom that she had quit her job permanently because she didn't want to work when she could enjoy what her husband earned for her. It stung to hear this. My hurt didn't stem from her choice not to work, but rather from her dishonesty about her decision. I wondered why she felt uncomfortable sharing the truth with me. I would never have judged her or discouraged her from quitting her job. I loved her and supported and respected all her choices. Yet, she felt the need to keep it a secret from me. That day, I felt a part of me break as I realized that my wife didn't fully trust me or feel entirely comfortable with me after all these years. I chose not to confront her about it because I didn't want her to think I had been eavesdropping on her conversation with her mother. Instead, I acted like nothing had happened, and we continued with our lives. Following that incident, I became extremely aware of my actions and behavior. I wanted to ensure that I wasn't giving her any reason to doubt my trustworthiness. I made every effort to create a safe, secure, and comfortable environment around me. I treated her well. Caroline's decision to leave her job turned her into an outstanding homemaker. She kept herself busy around the house, preparing delicious dinners that I truly enjoyed. Her cooking and baking skills were exceptional, and I admired how she continuously experimented with new dishes and cake recipes, always with great success. She also had a keen eye for home decor and design, consistently keeping our furniture and settings up to date. There's no denying that she excelled in this role. I've known people whose wives stay at home, but they don't cook as well or maintain the house as nicely as Caroline did. She had a keen sense of aesthetics, working with colors and arrangements effectively. She appeared genuinely happy and at peace with her new lifestyle, and I was genuinely happy for her. It pleased me to see her free from work-related stress and living life on her own terms. However, deep down, I still wondered why she felt the need to lie to me. I couldn't help but question if there might be a hidden issue or red flag in her decision, though I wanted to trust her and support her choices. Update. A few months later, we had a minor disagreement when the topic of starting a family and having children came up. We had been married for 3 years, and everything seemed fine. However, I felt the desire for children, and I decided to discuss it with Caroline. I want to make it clear that I would never pressure her into anything she didn't want. Her body, her choice. But I found it frustrating that she wasn't open to a reasonable conversation. Instead, she stormed off and slammed doors, which left me upset as well. I didn't realize our communication had deteriorated to the point where we couldn't talk without her getting angry. This time, I decided not to approach her or make amends until she acknowledged her behavior. I expected her to come to me once she had cooled down, but that didn't happen. I ended up falling asleep in the living room, hoping for a resolution, but she never emerged from the bedroom. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I stood there for a few minutes, hoping she would initiate a conversation, but she acted as though I wasn't even there. This only fueled my frustration, so I stopped trying to talk to her. I figured that if it didn't matter to her, then why should I bother? I went to my office and followed my usual routine. I had hoped to receive a text from Caroline, but I was disappointed when no message came. In the evening, I returned home as usual, and was surprised to find that Caroline was not there. This was unusual because she typically didn't go out at that time without informing me. I found it odd, but I went to the kitchen in the hope of finding a note, but there was nothing. I checked my phone again for any messages or voicemails, but there were none. I even tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I also noticed that she hadn't prepared lunch or dinner, which was a rare occurrence. I waited for her to return, and during that time, I decided I wasn't really angry anymore. I thought I would make amends and explain what I meant the previous day. Knowing Caroline's love for pasta, I decided to prepare it for us. After making the pasta, I checked my phone once more for updates, but there was still no response from her. My worry grew because her behavior was not normal, and I began to fear that something might be wrong. I reached out to some of her friends, but none of them knew her whereabouts. My anxiety escalated, and I started imagining all sorts of unsettling scenarios. I was becoming increasingly anxious. I continued calling her, but she remained unresponsive. As I was on the verge of leaving the house to seek help, Caroline unexpectedly arrived at the door. I was overcome with joy and gave her a heartfelt hug, but I also scolded her for her mysterious absence. She seemed rather nonchalant, acting as though I was overreacting. We sat down to have dinner, and Caroline couldn't help but smile when she saw that I had prepared pasta for us. She apologized for her behavior, and I reassured her that I was only trying to discuss the topic of having a baby with her. I made it clear that I would never pressure her into it unless we both were ready to become parents. We reconciled, and I expressed how worried I had been during her prolonged absence. Caroline explained that she had gone to visit her friend Sarah, who had invited her over. She hadn't informed me because she was upset with me, and her phone had run out of battery. After our conversation, we went to bed. Caroline quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't. The events of the day kept replaying in my mind, and I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. Something didn't seem right. Caroline's behavior felt completely out of character, and I couldn't understand it. It was unlike the considerate and loving person I had married, someone who never caused unnecessary stress or tension. Our relationship had always been built on open communication and mutual respect, which had kept our love strong through various life phases. Now, it felt as if that foundation was crumbling, as Caroline seemed to be withdrawing from communication and disregarding my feelings. I began to wonder if our relationship was falling apart. Update 2. It took me nearly a year to get back to you, but I've been dealing with a lot of issues that required my attention. Here's what happened next. 2 days later, I was at the store purchasing some items. On my way home, I stopped to buy Caroline's favorite chocolate, hoping to rekindle our love. While I was at the checkout, I unexpectedly ran into Sarah. She greeted me and inquired about Caroline's well-being. I mentioned that she should know since she had just met Caroline the previous day. However, Sarah appeared puzzled and clarified that she hadn't seen Caroline since last month. I was equally baffled and suggested that I might have misunderstood. During my drive home, I couldn't help but feel that my marriage might be on the brink of collapse. I couldn't tolerate dishonesty from Caroline. Where was she? And why had she lied to me? Upon returning home, I gave Caroline the chocolates I had bought, and she was delighted. We engaged in our usual conversation and shared some laughs, though I was pretending the entire time. My mind was preoccupied with thoughts about who Caroline had been with the previous day. As Caroline went to sleep that night, I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. I took her phone and unlocked it, checking her call and text history. To my surprise, I noticed that she had been frequently calling my best friend Simon, 35M, almost every day. This raised my suspicions. Simon had been my friend since childhood, as he was the son of my dad's closest friend. We had grown up together, attending the same schools and colleges, and eventually we both took over our father's businesses at the same time. However, Simon wasn't as dedicated to work as I was. He had a penchant for partying and showed little interest in business. In fact, he had been pressured by his father to take over the family business, and hadn't really had a choice in the matter. Simon and Caroline were good friends, given their long association with me. I appreciated their good rapport when we started dating because I believed it was essential for my partner to get along with my best friend. It made me very happy to see them getting along well. Throughout high school and college, we hung out together and had a great time. I felt fortunate to have the two people closest to my heart, my partner and my best friend, with me in every phase of life. The following day, I decided to meet up with Simon, driven by curiosity. I didn't intend to inquire about those calls, but I wanted to gauge if anything seemed amiss during our meeting. I visited his office, and as usual, he was absent. His business suffered due to his extreme carelessness and unprofessional conduct. I gave him a call, and he asked me to wait for a few minutes as he was almost there. When he arrived, he greeted me with his typical cheerful demeanor. He offered me food or drinks, and I requested a coffee. We engaged in various conversations, and as I was about to depart, he inquired about Caroline's well-being and mentioned that he hadn't spoken to her in a while. He suggested inviting us over for dinner as a reunion. I responded with a smile, agreeing that we would love that. As I left his office, I had a strong gut feeling that Caroline was cheating on me with him. I didn't require concrete proof because I felt it deep down. It was something I could discern in his unsettling gaze. It was glaringly apparent. However, I knew I needed evidence to address the situation properly. Once I returned home, I continued pretending with Caroline. When she went to take a shower, I seized the opportunity to install a tracking app on her phone. This app allowed me to access her phone, view her texts, calls, and monitor all her activities. I was prepared to gather incriminating evidence to proceed with a divorce. The following morning, my first action was to contact my lawyer. We had a detailed discussion about the situation, and I expressed my desire not to share any assets with Caroline after the divorce. I firmly believed she didn't deserve a single penny. The lawyer explained that if the evidence was substantial enough, she might not receive any financial benefit from the divorce. I was determined to ensure that outcome. I closely monitored Caroline's phone, and soon enough I obtained the crucial evidence I needed. Their text exchange was revolting and deeply unsettling. Caroline mentioned her intention to file for divorce within a few weeks, and that she planned to share whatever she gained with Simon, with the intent of marrying him. It became evident that she was genuinely in love with Simon, which added to my pain. I captured screenshots of the texts, providing me with the vital evidence to strengthen my case. I promptly sent these to my lawyer, who expressed optimism about our prospects. He initiated the divorce proceedings and filed a lawsuit against Caroline as well. I made a deliberate decision not to return home that day. I was determined to only engage with her in the courtroom, refraining from any communication or interaction. Her presence had become intolerable to me. I rented an apartment, recognizing that it would be a while before the case concluded, and I couldn't bear to be around her. Caroline received the divorce notice, and I'm certain it came as a shock to her. She bombarded me with numerous texts, inquiring about the notice and my whereabouts. Nevertheless, I chose not to respond. She was about to face severe consequences in various ways. The legal proceedings commenced, and I had to appear in court, where everything seemed to be in my favor, due to the solid evidence I had gathered. The legal proceedings continued for several months, ultimately concluding in my favor. Throughout those months, Caroline attempted to reconcile and apologize, but I maintained a facade of indifference. I refused to allow myself to acknowledge the pain I was enduring. In the end, Caroline received very little in the divorce because her intentions had been glaringly evident to everyone. She had no savings, having not worked since our marriage. Her presence in my life had been driven by my financial status, and she had been unfaithful with my best friend. It was clear that my best friend, Simon, was also motivated by my wealth and success, seeking to gain access to it through my wife. I never engaged in conversation with Simon again, and he wisely avoided contacting me, likely anticipating a negative reaction. As expected, Simon did not marry Caroline. His primary goal had been financial gain from her, which did not materialize. Upon learning the truth about Simon's actions through my father, Simon's own father felt immense disappointment and disgust toward his son. Simon had been devaluing his father's business while I managed to elevate my own. Dealing with the trauma of being betrayed by both my wife and my best friend was incredibly challenging. I had lost two of the closest individuals who had been by my side for a significant portion of my life. Life had taken on a harsh and unattractive appearance, leading to my depression. Fortunately, my parents provided unwavering support throughout this ordeal. They stood by me at every step, and my mother persuaded me to seek therapy as a means of addressing my emotions properly. Although I had been initially reluctant, I followed her advice and was grateful that I did. Therapy allowed me to heal and cope with my grief more effectively, preventing me from sinking into a state of despair and depression. Several months later, I encountered Simon, and during those difficult days, I couldn't restrain myself from expressing my anger towards him. I nearly resorted to physical violence, but office personnel intervened to prevent any altercation. Later on, I learned that Simon's business was on the brink of collapse due to his own recklessness and incompetence. He had incurred significant losses and faced numerous challenges as a result. I immersed myself in my business once more because it helped me to forget all the troubles that had befallen me. With time, I improved, as it has a way of helping you forget many things. I've managed to overcome the intense pain that was thrust upon me. I take pride in the person I've become and the position I hold today, despite facing numerous challenges in life. The ease with which I can now write about my pain is a clear indication that I have moved forward.